Hi, this is Dave Higgins, and this is Dave's Digital Training. And what we're going to look at is a method for correcting this image. We're going to use the Layers palette, and the reason we're going to use the Layers palette is that when we make corrections in the Layers palette, it does not destroy any of the information in the original image. So you always have the opportunity to change your mind. Now, this is a pretty good looking image, but as we look at it, we can see that it's too dark on this side. See how much darker it is on this side of the print. And that the clouds are washed out over here, don't have as much detail as I would like to see. And we don't have hardly any detail or separation in these greens back here. And we're going to be able to fix all of those problems. But before we start, the very first thing I always do is I make a duplicate of the background layer. Now there's several ways you can do this. You can click here and drag up over the little paper icon up here, and that's one way to make a duplicate. The other way I can make a duplicate is I can go on up to the Layers menu, click here, and I can get down to Duplicate Layer. Okay? Or I can click here and I can also duplicate the layer right there. So you can see there's several different ways to do it. We'll just, so here we'll click on this. And you have the opportunity to relabel the layer if you'd like to. I'm not going to. This isn't going to be this complex. So now we have the copy of the background layer. Now there are several reasons for doing this. Now I have protected my original piece of information. But more important, I can now compare the results. So I can see how what I've done affects the changes. And I can tell if I like them or not because I can always revert and look back at the original copy. Usually when we do an adjustment with the adjustment layer, we pull it out of right here and we use one of these layers. Right? Shadow and highlight are not available as an adjustment layer. So we actually have to apply it to this duplicate layer. This is a good reason for making the duplicate layer. Now to get this, we have to go on up and go to Enhance, come down here to Light, and then come on over here and go to Shadow, Highlight, right there. I'm just going to click on that, and it's going to open up. Now, you have to use these three sliders in conjunction with one another. And I'm going to slide them all back over so it's 0, so it's not hardly having any effect. We know, whoops, I got to have this one about halfway out. There's 0 on that right there. I want to bring up some of the shadow detail. So I'm going to pull the shadow detail in, and we can see how that opened that up in here, and that looks much better. Now I also want to bring up some of the highlight to bring in some detail in the clouds. Now you can see we have detail in the clouds. But the picture has now begun to look a little muddy. So that's where we have to use this mid-tone contrast to boost that back up. There it goes. Now you have to sort of fiddle with these. What you have to remember is you don't look at the sliders. You grab the slider and you watch what it does to the print. And you go too far, and then you come back and you come back until you find that middle spot that you like. So we'll take this one now and we'll go too far in the other direction, and just keep moving it until we get a spot that we're comfortable with. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the contrast. So too contrasty. That looks pretty good. When I'm looking at it, you see I can now get separation between these trees. So now I'm going to say OK. And now we've done the shadow highlight adjustment on its own layer. I'll turn that on and I'll turn that off so we can see the difference. See how much more detail we've picked up? Now the picture looks a little muddy, but we'll take care of that in the next step. Now the next step in the process is to adjust the contrasts, okay, or the brightness and darkness. And I use that with a levels adjustment. So we're going to click right up here on this little black and white circle here, and that's where the layer adjustments are. Now all of these adjustments we put on will not change the image. They can be turned on and off. So here's the levels adjustment. So I'm going to click on that, and it's now going to show us this little histogram. Okay, this is a visual interpretation of the tonal distribution within the image. This one over here is for the white. If I move this, it will adjust the white area of the image. Okay. This one over here is for the black area of the image, and if I move this, That will adjust the black. And the middle one is the middle tone. So now what we're going to do is we're going to adjust these. Now, in this particular case, we can see that the white is what I say is out of range. It's way beyond the detail where this shoulder starts. So I'm going to slide that in quite a ways. Okay? And now I'm going to come on over here and I'm going to move the mid-tone around. And then I'm going to pull this in. I go a little bit more with the brightness. So now we're getting a lot more brilliance and separation in there. I'm going to move the mid-tone, and this is the kind of thing that you just have to experiment with. You just can't go in and say, well, I know it's these settings that are going to work, because every image is a little different. So let's say OK, and now we can turn that off by just clicking on the eyeball right here, and it'll go away. Okay, and then when we click back on it again, it'll come back. So we can see the difference. There it is with it. There it is without it. Now I'll turn both of these off so we can see what we started with. So that's the original image. This is the image with the shadow highlight. And this is the one with the levels adjustment. So we can see that the image is already beginning to look much better. Most of the time, when you take pictures outdoors, especially with a bright blue sky like this, and in the middle of the day, the picture will tend to have a little bit of a blue cast to it. And you can see this blue cast by looking at the greens and seeing that the greens look a little muddy. They don't quite look right. They should be more yellow, a little bit more brilliance in those greens. And we're going to correct that by using something called a photo filter. So again, if we click over here on the adjustments layer, we're going to go down right here, and we're going to click this time on this one right here. This says Photo Filters. And that's going to open up this dialog box right here. Now we have several different filters in here that we can use. But the ones we're going to use right now are the 3 warming ones. And I'm going to go with the last warming one because that's the one I like the best because it has more yellow in it. And we can adjust. It's just like everything else with the slider. We can adjust. And again, we take it down so there's nothing. Take it up so there's too much. And then just keep moving it back and forth. And what I'm looking at is like the yellow in that field. See how much brighter that yellow is? And the yellow in the grass. So I'm going to say OK for that. We've now adjusted the color balance. Now let's turn that on and off. And you see how much more brilliant the sky looks. How the yellows in here are much better. Now if you think it's too much, you can go right up here to this opacity level, and adjuster, and because this is on levels, we can click on here and we can adjust how much that layer works very finely. So I can say, well, I think it's a little too much, so I'm just going to knock it down a little bit right there. And then I just say, click up here, and that's it. Now again, on, off, on, off. So again, we can see how we've improved it by taking out that blue cast. Now, if you take the picture at sunrise or sunset, the sun is lower and it comes through the atmosphere at a different angle, and that might actually create a picture that was a little too warm. But we seem to like pictures that are warmer rather than colder, so I always go for the warmer adjustment. Now on my basic adjustments, this is my last step, and I'm an old-time black and white photographer, so I'm going to convert this to a black and white image. And there's several reasons that I want to do that. You have no idea how much impact the image will have as a black and white unless you actually change it. In some cases, the black and white will be more powerful than the color image. The black and white tends to put the emphasis on the composition. And this picture has a very strong X composition in it. And in the black and white, that might be more obvious. Now, it's really easy to make this into a black and white. I'm going to click back up here. And this is not the only method, but this is the method that I'm going to use for this. I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to go down to Gradient Map. And that shows us this dialog box right here. Now, there's several different matte adjustments. You have to click on this little arrow right here, and that will then show you the set. And you want to click on this one right here, and you can see that that pretty quickly makes a very nice dramatic black and white. So I'm going to say OK. Now, you can see how the clouds have a lot more power in the black and white than they do in the color, and we can see that again by just clicking on the eyeball, turning it on and off. I have to wait for the on, off, okay? And you see how much more powerful it is. Now you can also do something else that's interesting with this. I think that the color image is a little too garish, and I'd like to tone it down just a little bit. So I'm going to turn the black and white layer on, go on up here again to opacity, right here, and I'm going to click on the opacity slider, and I can move this down, and it will slowly blend the two images together. So I can make it look like it's just got a little bit of color in there, like it's a hand-colored image, about like that. And I think I'm more comfortable with that than with this. It just takes the edge off the color. Puts a little bit better blue in the sky. So you can use it to blend the two together. So these are the basic 4 steps that I would do with any image that I was considering on making into an exhibit quality print. Or if I had a print that I knew I had a lot of shadow details lost or a lot of highlight details lost. This is not something I would do with every image that I wanted to process. Only with those that I felt that were worthy of it. Well, let's take a look at the final results. On the left-hand side of the page you can see the thumbnails. The top thumbnail is the original image. And you can see how flat that image is and how there's not as much detail on the clouds as I would like. The next image is the black and white rendition of the image. And the last image is the one with all of the adjustments placed in the color image. And we can see how the clouds have much better detail. The yellow on the grass is much brighter, and we have better detail separation between the trees and the background trees. Now my favorite is the large one, which is the combination of both the black and the white color blended together, which knocks a little of the hard edge off the color and creates a more muted and pleasant scene.